All right, Black Power to all the comrades. This is Brother Yakanan coming to you live and direct from Houston, Texas. This message is a tribute to our dearly departed sister, Sandra Bland. And so the title of this message is Sandy Still Speaks. I got a message from a friend of mine a few weeks ago that the People's New Black Panther Party had appeared in the Sandra Bland documentary that was coming on HBO. I had been anticipating this release, and so I sat and watched. I had no idea that they had, captured moments of us in the video. So as I watched, I do what I normally do when I see certain atrocities committed against our people, that we absolutely have no power to do anything about. I sat and I just wept. Just, all the feelings and the emotions, everything came back from that moment. I just felt it all over again. So, it's time for us to have some real talk here. A lot of people, they sit in front of the camera, and make videos because that's something that they want to do. Me, this is not something that I want to do. This was something that I was called to do. I don't want to be sitting here in front of you making videos like this, because by me sitting here making videos like this, what it basically means is something is very wrong. We have a real serious problem. America has a past and a present, and the slave masters' children now rule America. They have the same blood running in their veins that the architects of this system had. The people that wrote the Constitution, that showed their hatred for us even in their laws. They smile and they laugh in our face. But the true matter is they couldn't change their nature if they had to. Something that was made crooked is not something that we can make straight. So there are certain unwritten rules, that are supposed to be acknowledged in America. Loudmouth, self-educated, uppity Negroes are silenced in America. We know that has always been the case. You're supposed to take on the education that has been given to you, and you're not supposed to venture off on your own, and begin to self-educate yourself. So Sandra Bland should have never been inside of a jail cell. Sandra Bland didn't do anything wrong to be arrested that day. She was asked about her attitude. See, what these slave masters' children expect, they want respect from you. They want you to say, "Hello, sir. How you doing today, ma'am?" When they walking on the sidewalk, they want you to move out of the way, take your hat off and tip your hat to them. When it's raining outside, they want you to lay down so they can walk over puddles, and so they don't get their nice shoes messed up. That they got off of your oppression. This is what they think. When you go in front of the judge, they want you to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Take your hands out of your pocket. They'll sit up and they'll Jesus you to death all your life. But whenever you get in the courtroom, there's no mention of Jesus. There's no mention of mercy, grace. All that is thrown out the window. That's not the conversation no more. So all that nonsense about, knowing the law and this and that, it's a bunch of nonsense. When you're in captivity, you can know the law all you want to, and it does you no good. If you get caught on the back streets of Jasper, Texas late at night, see what your knowledge of the law does for you. That's where James Byrd was dragged to his death. Get caught on the streets of Waller County late at night and see how much of your knowledge of the law, see what that does for you. It ain't going to help you at all whatsoever. We've asked for dash cams. We didn't ask for tasers. We didn't ask for, body cams. We didn't march. We didn't prayed. We didn't sung. We didn't held hands. We didn't voted. We didn't sat in. We didn't died in. We done said hands up, don't shoot. We done came up with all kind of organizations. We done came up with all kind of slogans. And regardless of what we do at the end of the day, it seems that we don't have no power in our hands to change our situation. We've had leaders who have came, who have tried to change things for us, who have had absolutely no power to change nothing. They could have actually lined Martin Luther King Jr. up and Malcolm X on a firing squad in our face in broad daylight, shot them dead, and the only power we would have had in our hands is to burn up our neighborhoods where we lived at. So little old lady who don't even have transportation to get to the store can't even make it to the store to go get milk now. And this is all the power that we have in our hands to do stuff when atrocities are committed against us, when our leaders are assassinated. I just shake my head at it. It's sad. It's sad as can be. So even though we asked for these dash cams, this officer who arrested Sandra Bland cleverly took her out of the view of the dash cam where he could put in his false claim of assault, which is what he did. You're going to have a great disruption of life going on at that point in time. So whether you are guilty of a crime or innocent of a crime, you're going to get your car towed. You got bail to pay now. More than likely, you're going to lose your job, even if you just get an assault on your record. If you go into court for it, you're probably about to get fired now. That's how they doing it now. They done stepped their game up. So Sandy goes to jail. She sits in jail over the weekend. Now Monday morning come, and she is supposedly found hanging in her cell. Now, as a community, we hear this news that Sandy has been hung. We see the circumstances surrounding her death. And we get to know Sandy through Sandy Speaks. And just all the circumstances surrounding her death, we just was uncomfortable with the sheriff's account of a suicide. Sandy was a fighter. It didn't make no sense for her just to give up the fight like that. She was looking forward, to her day in court and dealing with this. You know what I'm saying? She was a fighter. You just knew that. So the account of suicide just didn't make no sense at all whatsoever. We live in two different Americas. White America is going to always, do victim blaming. In the case of Trayvon Martin, they said Trayvon was, had been suspended because he had some trace amounts of marijuana in his bag. Mike Brown, they released a video of Mike Brown showing Mike Brown in the store, saying he had violent behavior. Eric Garner, he was choked because he had loose cigarettes and was resisting arrest. We all know a store where they selling loose cigarettes at and ain't nobody being arrested or choked because of it but us. So in the case of Sandra Bland, this is the evidence that they came up with against Sandra Bland. The assistant district attorney said that she was suicidal because of the amount of marijuana she had in her system. The district attorney said she was likely scared. She was going to lose her job. She had picked up a felony, and she had lost a baby about 14 months ago. She was in a new location far away from her family, and who knew what she was thinking. So the sheriff said there was a concrete floor with a concrete wall with a solid iron door. Your physical body with a high level of THC working, a few days in this condition, and in your mind, your world has ended. So these Klan members got together and concocted this story that Sandra Bland was high on marijuana and she hung herself because the marijuana made her depressed. They some worthless, no good, sorry bastards. That's the only thing you could say for these people. So now let's look at the facts. This is what Sandra Bland's friend said about her. He said, if you knew anything about Sandra Bland, you knew that She had been through much more than just 3 days in jail. So in 2009, so in 2009, Sandra Bland was arrested for possession of marijuana. The charges were dropped. In 2010, she was arrested for possession of marijuana again. Sandra Bland did 30 days in the Waller County jail. Then she backdoored and did 2 more weeks in Waller County. So you have somebody who did a month and a half of jail time, but then you're going to turn around and say 3 days was much too tough for her to do? It just don't make no sense at all whatsoever. So what we do know for a fact is that the official jail documents were forged. Sandra Bland was supposed to be checked on every hour. The jailer who was supposed to be doing it, he forged the documents and just was writing down he was checking on it, and he claimed he really wasn't truly checking on her. So the intake form at the jail says Sandra Bland was suicidal and that she had also lost a baby 14 months ago. What was so odd about this is the family knew about the miscarriage that she had, but the family never knew anything about a suicide at all whatsoever. So our last hope for justice in this case came with the independent autopsy that was going to be done. It was performed by a sister, and we was here on the ground. So we had gotten word that, the sister had been gotten to, and she had been threatened. So we had already knew what the results would be before we even got the results. So, however, she was willing to say that the large amounts of marijuana found in her system were just absolutely absurd. So she ruled out death by strangulation. She said that no one put their hand around Sandy's neck and choked her and killed her like that. Now, what was missing, what the police never turned over, was the trash bag, the ligature that was used around her neck. This ligature had no DNA on it at all whatsoever, and it had no fingerprints on it. Now, for you to hang yourself, it is highly impossible for you to be able to work that out without putting any fingerprints on the bag, and none of your DNA is on the bag at all whatsoever. That's highly impossible. We all know that. We're not no fools. So the coroner should have known without the bag being there, without them turning over the bag, that there was some foul play involved. Not only did they not turn over the bag, but there was no core temperature that was taken at the time of Sandy's death. That's the first thing you do in somebody's death. You go in and you take the core temperature so you can determine the time of death. Also, the stomach contents were not turned over. From the stomach contents, we could have found out what was her last meal, what time did she eat. We could have found out a little bit more, but these key things were not turned over in this case. So, no one was ever held liable for the jail documents being forged. Nobody was ever held liable for Sandy's death at all whatsoever. 130 hours of video was watched, and no one was seen going in and out of Sandy's jail. In and out of Sandy's jail cell this entire time after 130 hours of video. There were no time stamps on the video, so we didn't know when this video was even taken. So Sandy's family got $1.9 million and a promise of jail reform and Sandra Bland Parkway. That was it. That was the victory. So Sandra Bland knew she was going to be famous. She didn't know what she was going to be famous for. She just knew she was going to be famous. So if Sandy's death was a sign, then what does that sign say to us? What it says to me is that we can be murdered and have absolutely no power to stand before our enemies. So that brings me to a certain scripture. See, I'm not going to be the type of person that's going to sit in a situation with you, and I'm going to sit in a situation for 400-500 years and act like I have absolutely no clue at all whatever is going on. You know, we done did all these things to try to figure out what's going on with us, and we still have no clue. So I have to go to my creator and I have to ask questions. You know, I'm like Marvin Gaye, you know, what's going on? Because I'm not going to sit here with you all this time and go round and round the bat and not go to the source of the problem. And this is what Leviticus 26:37 says. They shall stumble over one another as it were before a sword, when no one pursues, and you shall have no power to stand before your enemies. All right, let's break that down a little bit. That's Leviticus 26:37. Said we shall stumble over one another as if it were before a sword, and we shall have no power to stand before our enemies. You know what it's basically saying is that our problem is going to be with one another, which we can plainly see. We have more problems with one another than we have, you know, with anyone else. We can't even sit in a room with one another without arguments breaking out, without divisions breaking out, without us going all in our separate ways and having different opinions and this and that. Our families are torn apart, just all kind of travesties. And then it also says that we would have no power to stand before our enemies. So when others create these atrocities against us, we have no power to stand before them at all whatsoever. There were a bunch of things that was written about us in this book. We have continued to fail to be able to identify our exact problem of what's going on with us as a people. We have let other people, you know, basically tell us that all we have to do is ask for forgiveness. It's all about mercy and grace. But what if that's not the case at all whatsoever? What if we done been lied to by people that hate us? So it's kind of like when your mother used to tell you to, you know, wash the dishes, or by the time I get back home, if you ain't wash them dishes, I'm gonna put something on your behind. You have a choice. You know, you can either do it or you don't. And if you don't do it, there's consequences that come along with that. And we as a people, and you can't say your mother cursed you. It's a life and death is laid before you. That was a choice you had. You didn't do it, so you got the punishment for it. As a people, we have a certain behavior we should be carrying on. And if we're not carrying on a certain behavior, there was certain things that was promised that was going to happen to us. And everything that was written in the prophecies about us have come to pass. And we have to first identify what our problem is first. You know, before we can move forward on trying to solve our problems. We can't just continue to keep going round and round about in this manner. And so we're a very spiritual people. We're a righteous people. And I've always said this before, man, once we cut the light on, you know, the darkness disappears. And so, like I said, I do this because this was something I was called to do. This is in memory of Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland thought that we could unite and we can come together with people, but we can't come together with people who hate us. You know, we have to educate ourselves and we have to take back the power to define. Our enemies have defined who we are up to this point, and we just have to take back the power to define. We are united, you know, one love, black power, all power to the people.